If you are watching this video in hopes that you could potentially find the perfect strategy to getting through your backlog, then I am sorry, I cannot help you here. Because if I'm being completely honest, I'm making this video because I still don't have the perfect strategy myself. I have tried far too many strategies that I've gotten from other people. I have tried the spreadsheet with my entire Steam, PlayStation, and Nintendo libraries. I have tried the websites where it just randomly picks a game from your Steam library before you. I have even tried closing my eyes and clicking something random from my Steam library, and all I am left with is feeling overwhelmed as hell with how many games on my backlog that I still have. This video is not the perfect game plan to complete my backlog, because to be completely honest, the perfect one will likely never exist. Which may come to a shock to you because you see all of these people on YouTube or forum posts telling everybody how they got a massive chunk of their backlog completed or even finished their backlog, saying that this is the perfect strategy to completing your backlog. And if I'm being completely honest, they can sound a little bit pretentious when they say that you will crush your backlog if you do this strategy I came up with last week. The only video series I've really seen that doesn't do this is Daryl Talks Games' The Completing Backlog videos. He doesn't say that this spreadsheet plan is a definitive plan to complete your backlog, but he gives advice that will genuinely help people in the quest of completing the backlog. And then he comes up with his own ultimate plan to completing his backlog that he's only doing as an attempt, and ultimately tries to answer the question of whether or not it's even worth completing your backlog in the first place. In the second part, he finished his backlog, and then he pointed out how well the strategy of the spreadsheet worked and where it didn't work. And then I started critiquing his ultimate strategy because I believe that the strategy of list every single game to play on a spreadsheet, cut whatever you don't have the drive to beat, and going on from there is pretty flawed in concept. Because I tried this method after that video. I wrote down every single game that I wanted to play in a spreadsheet, though I didn't cut as many games as he did, but just made sure that it was games that I actually wanted to play myself and not just blind suggestions from friends. I thought the stats of how badly I would want to play a specific game was ridiculous because if it's on the list, then of course I'm going to want to play it at some point, but I didn't know how badly I wanted to play it at the time when crafting this list, along with the fact that as time progresses, I still won't know how badly I want to play one game or another. Ultimately, my spreadsheet looked a little bit like this, because I am not from the 12th century and I do not know how spreadsheets work. See, I didn't even fucking put like the big boxes, I just wrote in the individual boxes and then just pressed enter every single time. I think I'm the only person in history who doesn't know how to do fancy stuff like that in spreadsheets, honestly. But once I did this, had this list set up, knowing that I had no time limit because that was arguably his biggest suggestion, it came to picking a game to play, and I looked at this spreadsheet and I didn't think, oh thank God I have this list of 270 games to make things so much easier. Instead, I was just so overwhelmed that I just didn't have the drive to pick a game to play because there are just... For the longest time, I've always disagreed with the idea of there are too many games to play because I've always thought that it was ridiculous. Why are you struggling to pick a game to play when your list of games is arguably very small in the grand scheme of things? And I'd imagine you'd already know what kinds of games that you aren't interested in playing, so that could cut entire series or even genres. You didn't recently add a game to your backlog because you didn't want to play it, so for the love of God, just pick a game. But just picking a game becomes way harder when all of those games are sitting there right in front of you on a big list, just sitting there, just minding its own business. I am well aware that I enjoy action games like Devil May Cry, but looking at the list of every action game I have sitting right in front of me becomes a little bit intimidating. Baldur's Gate 3 is a game that I actually do know I want to play through at some point, at least finish a playthrough, but I'm also aware of the fact that the time it takes to beat this one game would take the same amount of time to beat 5, maybe even 6 10-hour games. I would constantly put this into consideration, and it really screwed over any chance I would have at playing through some bigger games. Clearly, this strategy would never work for me, so I had to make some sort of change. And so, at the beginning of 2024, I came up with a different sort of game plan. And so I spent about a day coming up with it, and it's a little hard to explain bound in this green box, so I think I need a change of setting. Here we are. Welcome to the whiteboard, where I dropped it the day that I got it, so it is broken. So the strategy that I came up with for the backlog in 2024 went a little bit like this. I listed out 10 games, and the rule was that I had to play through all 10 of these games before I could play through more games that aren't on this list. I also had a rule that if I beat a game that had a sequel and I really enjoyed the first game, then I could continue on and play the sequel, but once I finished this 10 lists of games, then I could make another 10 lists of games. And this strategy worked out quite well at the beginning. The first game I played through in 2024 was Red Dead Redemption 2, and I beat that in like 2 weeks. I really liked that game. I didn't have a way to play Red Dead 1 at the time, but it's on PC now, so it's gonna happen soon. And so I moved on to Dishonored. Dishonored was a game that I started off multiple times, but I never got through the halfway point, so I decided to take the time and play through that game, and I really enjoyed it. I had Dishonored 2 in my Steam library, so I added Dishonored 2 to the list, and I beat that. And I enjoyed my time with it, but I didn't have the drive to play Death of the Outsider, so I left that off the list. So I kept going through these games, and as I beat more games, I checked them off the list. I beat Titanfall 2, I started to play through Amnesia, got shit scared, never even beat it, and then something weird happened. I would look at this list, and I didn't want to keep playing these games. I started playing other games. I saw that I had the beginner's guide in my Steam library, and I was like, it's a short game. It can be beaten in a single sitting. So I decided, just why not add the beginner's guide to it? And so I did. And then more games started coming to mind, and I decided just to add more games to the list. And I realized that I wasn't touching this list at all, and it upset me greatly, but I never went back to it. But it's weird, when I made the list of 10 games, these are games that I really wanted to play at the time. So why didn't I have the drive to play them anymore after getting through a good chunk of the list? I think this concept is overall pretty good, though I feel like its main issue here was the fact that there were too little of choices to pick, so much so that I blatantly ignored it in order to play something else. The list of 10 games loomed over me, and I was basically being told what to do despite the fact that I was the one that made it. It was very clear I did not want to continue this style of list because I was way too restricted. But I didn't want to do the giant list because I was too unrestricted. I get the feeling you may be aware of the Decision Lab's study on the paradox of choice, where if you have too many options and you may feel dissatisfied with your choice because out of all of these video games to play, how do you know if the one that you picked was the one most worth your time at the moment? But what you may not have remembered in this study is that very, very briefly it brings up where there aren't enough choices, and then you will again not be satisfied with your choice. We're gonna jump right back to Whiteboard James to explain what's up with that. Welcome back. The choice versus satisfaction chart goes a little bit like this. We have the y-axis and the x-axis, and the x-axis is the number of choices, and the y-axis is how satisfied you may be with whatever choice that you pick. So what the study says is that if you have too many choices, you will not be as satisfied with your choice, no matter what choice it is, because there are so many. How do you know that the one that you picked is the correct one? It also briefly touches on the fact that if you have too little choices, the same happens. If you only have like 2 options, then you still won't know which one's the right one because you're basically flipping a coin. And so the chart looks a little bit something like this. I fucked it. This part in the negative section may look a little bit confusing to you. I'll just explain it real quick for you. When you are given 0 choices, as in they basically just hand you an option, oftentimes you will feel dissatisfied with the fact that you couldn't pick the outcome. If I was told to play a specific game, I would not be satisfied with that outcome. And then once you're given 1 choice, this is where that looks like, just 1 option, then you will be just on the middle ground. You wouldn't really care. It's like, it's the only game that was available to me, so, I mean, I might as well. I'd feel no anger nor satisfaction from it. Anger is the wrong word. What the... I feel like I wouldn't feel angry if I was playing any video game, unless it just fucking sucked. So that chart continues to go up a little bit. As you get more options, then you get more satisfied with whichever one you pick, because you actually had a choice between them. And then it peaks right around here. Right here, that's the sweet spot. You want the amount of choices that you have to be right around here so that you feel peak satisfaction with the maximum amount of choices that give you that option for satisfaction. And then once you get too many options, then eventually it'll go back into that you feel less satisfied with your choice because you don't know which one's the right one. See, I honestly think that the number of choices was actually correct when I made my experiment. It was 10 choices, so it was very easy to make a decision and feel satisfied with the time I put into whichever game I picked. So I'd argue that 10 is the max choice. But once I played through one of the choices, that being Red Dead Redemption 2, the amount of choices didn't stay 10, it is now 9. And 9 is still a lot, which is probably why I was very easily able to cruise through a few games. And then the problem kept coming when it went to 8, when it went to 7, when it went to 6, and then all of a sudden I was just not going to be satisfied with any choice that I made. And then when I'm put into the perspective of the spreadsheet, then I have all of the choices sitting there right in front of me, and then I am just plummeting down the spiral because I will not feel satisfied with whichever game that I choose because there are so many options. How do I know that I picked the correct one? See the issue here? If you try to set 10 games, and it will start off very strong. An excellent lineup of games to pick from, and from the first few games you may pick, you will feel very satisfied with your choice. But as the list gets smaller and smaller as you play through more and more games, you suddenly get to a point where you feel less satisfied with your choice. What's the solution here? Do I create a new list every time I get to a point where the choice becomes intimidating? I feel like at that point I'd be spending more time making a list that I could be spending on playing a game instead. It may be a good choice, but I feel like doing that from the start might not work out well for me. It may work out later in the future and I might be willing to try it, but for now I don't think I'm going to start off with that, and maybe I'll evolve to that point. But as I was getting ready to critique Daryl's videos on completing his backlog, he decided to drop a video about how he secretly worked on his backlog in 2024 and his completely different strategy, which ruined half of my talking points, but the videos were still a very good point of reference, so I talked about them anyways. Let's get to talking about that other one though. What his strategy for 2024 was, and what he explained in the video, if you haven't watched it yet, which you should by the way. In fact, this is not a request, this is a demand. He had a list of 22 games that he could pick up and play at any moment, but he didn't make it a high priority to play through these games, and instead, if when finishing a game he gets a drive to play through a different game, then he will just start playing that instead. He may have only gotten through a small amount of games on the original 22 list, but ultimately he had an enjoyable time, which he reported was much less stressful than his playing as many games as he could in a year. And this might be it. As you recall earlier in the video, from my original 2024 list of 10 games, I very much went off and played whatever game came to mind that I had the urge to play, and it didn't really stick to this list at all. I was already doing this strategy and I didn't even notice it. All I need to do is change my mindset from I keep getting distracted from this list and feeling some sort of disappointment to I can always come back to this list later. Ladies and gentlemen, I have a plan. I am going to make it an effort to play through 30 games in 2025, documenting as I go. And then once December comes around, I will be making a video recapping the year of my backlog progress. Whether or not I was able to hit that 30 games goal, and how good it felt playing through the games with the strategy I came up with. I spent a few hours carefully making a list of 10 games that I could very easily jump into at any moment if I have no idea what game I want to play. And these games aren't just games I'm interested in. Every single one of these games are ones that could very easily jumpstart a new obsession for a type of game I could go through. They aren't the best of the best in the genre, but rather they are solid 8 out of 10 games that may eventually lead me to the best of the best in the genres. To list a few examples, I chose the original Resident Evil 1 because it may not be the best survival horror game, but it can help me determine if I'm willing to continue playing these types of games and maybe maybe it could make 2025 the year that I finally play Silent Hill 2. I picked Still Wakes the Deep because I always hear that it's similar enough to Outlast, but Outlast I hear is the best game of that style. I may not get the drive to play through games like Outlast because I played the best of the style, so why should I bother with the others? That last one is just me though. I have a pretty bad history of playing the best and the best of a genre or the series, and then when starting the next game from that game, I'm just not having as much fun and usually drop the game because of it. Or even worse, I play a game that I really don't like from a genre and it loses any chance I would have to ever play a game from that genre again. Aww, look at you, little man. When I tried playing Hollow Knight for the first time, I was told that it was the best of the best in Metroidvanias, only to not enjoy it at all. And it genuinely killed any chance of me playing a Metroidvania again because of it, which sucks because I've heard so many good things about Blasphemous and stuff like that, and I just never want to play it. So I'm avoiding that as well with this list. Games I know aren't the best, but know aren't the worst. If I can figure out a good B-tier game in the genre, then I won't leave myself angry, but I also won't find myself disappointed in a quality game that isn't just as good as the one that I played before. I want to highlight Resident Evil 1 again because old Resident Evil has plenty of different aspects that I may or may not love, which can expand me to other games in that series and other survival horror games in general, depending on what I like about RE1 and what I don't like. If I discover I really don't like the tank control style RE games, I know which ones not to play. If I don't like the horror aspects, I can just play less horror-centric RE titles. And if I just enjoyed my time with it, I can play more RE games or something like that. So I have a game plan. Beat 30 games in 2025. I can start as many as I'd like and not finish them as long as I make a conscious effort to play them, but I at least have to beat 30. If you would like to track my progress as the year goes on, then I recommend checking out my Backlog account where I will update it throughout the year to see what games I'm currently playing, what games I've shelved, what games that I've already beat, and I'm a backer now, so you'll get to see what specific genres I choose to play, along with my rate of shelving games and completing games. So I think it's pretty cool and you should check it out when you have the time. And as the year goes on, I will be writing the script for that video in December, so I have an easy head start when December rolls around for the recap. This series is a 100% for me series. I'm not trying to grow my channel in any way with this, though you can expect the same quality as the other uploads. I'm going to spend the rest of this month finishing games that I already started this year so I can have no loose ends when January rolls around. And I can start my completing backlog journey in 2025 with a game I've been dying to play but only recently got easy access to, Red Dead Redemption. Will this be the year that I finally play the Metal Gear Solid games? Will I take a 50-hour venture through the wastelands of New Vegas? Can I discover my admiration for the horrific town of Silent Hill? Only time will tell. Thank you guys for watching. I'll talk to you later. Stop eating things. He found plastic. This plastic wasn't here before. It's going in the pocket for the rest of the video, and it's your fault. He's like recording it, looking at me like I'm fucking evil. He's just like looking sinister. Leon. Yeah, look at that devious child. Look at him. Oh, he's getting ready to pounce. What you gonna do? Come for my foot. Ooh. Oh. Ah!